Hi everyone, I am Navya from White Falcon Publishing and I warmly welcome you all in today's special author conversation. We are truly delighted to have with us Subrato Mukherjee, the author of Moksha, The Liberation. This book is a beautiful and thoughtful attempt to highlight the vastness and magnanimity of the Vedic scriptures. It brings together the wisdom of Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, and Itihasas and present them in a meaningful storyline. The book moves from the origin of the universe and the trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva to the divine leelas of Krishna and finally into deep philosophical discussions on karma, dharma, non-duality, kundalini, tantra, and Mahavidyas. So today we are in conversation with Subrato Mukherjee. Sir, firstly we welcome you and thank you for joining us today. So I am moving on with the questions now. And sir, my first question from you is, what inspired you to write this book? I mean, was there a particular moment or experience in your life that made you feel that this book needed to be written?
Right. Thanks. Thank you, Navia, for inviting me to this interview and for the wonderful introduction as well. Big hi to all your viewers and all your audience. Uh, Coming to your first question as to what inspired me to write the book, I think there are several reasons for it, Navia. You know that I have been a passionate student of astrology. And during the course of my study, I had realized that there are these lot of astrological facts, besides the core texts on Jyotish Shastras, etc. There are some of these, or in fact, all of these astrological facts, which has some wonderful stories behind them that is covered in our scriptures. Okay, and I thought it would be interesting to bring forth these stories, to my readers. Okay? As an example, take for example the evolution of the grahas of the planets Rahu and Ketu. Okay, who are they? How did they evolve? What are their characteristics? What are their attributes? Why do they share enmity with Surya and Chandra, which is basically the sun and the moon? So they have a fascinating story. That particular episode in the scripture is called the Samudra Manthan, or the churning of the ocean, which talks about the story of Rahu and Ketu. Okay,
Okay.
in a similar fashion, why is Saturn inimical towards the Sun? Why is there an enmity between Jupiter and Chandra? Because there's a story that says that Chandra had once eloped with Jupiter's wife, whose name was Tara. Okay, so from then onwards, the enmity started. Okay, so these are very interesting mythological stories, which I thought would be of interest to my readers. That was perhaps the initial and the foremost reasons. Okay, uh, gradually, as I delved more into the subject, and now it was beyond astrology. Okay, as I delved more into the scriptures, I realized that there are some stories, some very simplistic stories, which convey a much more deeper and a profound meaning of life, of the universe, and of the scientific facts as well. Okay, for
Okay.
example, um, there is a there is a very simple story, okay, which says that Chandra had 27 wives. Okay? And out of these 27 wives, he loved one of his wives whose name was Rohini the most. Okay? So
Okay.
this is the story, and there is a separate part of the story as well, which I'm not getting into. But at a deeper scientific level, what it reflected was that these 27 wives of Chandra actually represent the 27 nakshatras or constellations that we have in our universe. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
And scientifically, the moon actually spends more time in the constellation of Rohini than any other constellation. Okay?
Okay.
And that is the scientific reason for it. Because of the width of the constellation of Rohini, because of certain orbital motions of the moon, and so on and so forth, right? But what I'm trying to say is that these deeper scientific facts is what people would not have understood in those times, even in today's times, perhaps, right? So they were reflected in simple story formats for the common man to understand. Okay, so that's perhaps the second reason that inspired me. And the third and more profound reason for writing this book, Navya, was, perhaps to bring about some of the unique facts which are hidden in the stories, which we think we generally know, but we do not know it in entirety. For example, uh, we all, most of us would know about who Abhimanyu was. Abhimanyu was the son of Arjuna and
Yeah.
Subhadra. He was a
Yeah.
great warrior, a legend. Some of us would also know that the Chakravyuh episode of Abhimanyu, jahan he enters, he knew how to enter the Chakravyuh, but he did not know how to exit, and then the Kauravas had killed him unfairly. Okay, but what most of us would not know is that Abhimanyu, in his previous incarnation, in his previous life, was a person named Varchas. Okay, and it was as Varchas that Abhimanyu's destiny was sealed. Okay, he was destined to die at the age of 16 years in the Battle of Kurukshetra. Right. So this is something, a very unusual fact, which perhaps people wouldn't know. Okay. Then there are some facts like why is Brahma not worshipped that popularly? Okay. Um, See, we find a lot of the Shiva temples, the Vishnu temples, the Adi Shakti temples, but you wouldn't really come across a Brahma temple, which is, there's one in Rajasthan in Pushkar. Okay, beyond that. So why is Brahma not worshipped? There are several reasons for that. Okay, for example, uh, why do we donate hair in the Tirupati Balaji temple? Okay, there is a story to it. I mean, Balaji, in his as the Srinivasa incarnate, wanted to marry a lady called Padmavati, who is no one else than basically Lakshmi incarnate herself. So, in order to get married, Balaji required some money, and he had borrowed or loaned that money from Kuber. And in order to repay Balaji's debt to Kuber, people donate their hair. So that's what the story says. Okay? But there is a deeper spiritual meaning to the whole story. The idea, the concept is that when you donate your hair as a person, you actually shun off your ego. Okay,
Okay.
so that's the deeper spiritual significance of it. Okay, then facts like uh, see, what we know as the Gita today, okay, is the Bhagavad Gita. Okay,
Yeah.
but did you know that there are 60 Gitas that exist in the universe today? Okay, did you know that there are 300 plus versions of the Ramayana itself? Okay, and the popular phrases or words like the Lakshman Rekha, it never found, Lakshman Rekha is nowhere mentioned in the original Valmiki Ramayana. Okay, it was something that came later with the Ramcharitmanas and all that stuff. Okay, there wasn't a Swayamvar of Sita at all as per the Valmiki Ramayana. Okay, so these are the facts that I uh, tried to bring forth in my book. Then very interesting things. For example, why do we have a 40-day pilgrimage to the Ayyappan temple? Why do people wear black clothes when they go to the Ayyappan pilgrimage? That's because of its association with Saturn, which represents the black color. Okay. Why are women of menstruating age generally not encouraged to go into the Ayyappan temple? Or there are similar such temples, right?
Yeah.
Because there are reasonings for Vayu and Prana energy flows that are associated with such kind of rules and regulations. Okay, right. So
Yeah.
these fascinating stories is what I've tried to bring forth in the book, and I hope that will make an interesting read. So yeah.
That's a very interesting answer. I mean, a lot of information was new to me. So thanks for this, meaningful answer. So moving on to the next question. So the book beautifully brings together stories from Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, and Itihasas, right? And how did you manage to organize such vast knowledge in one meaningful storyline? How did you do that?
Well, yes, it was a difficult task. It's a vast literature. Right? Hindu
Yeah.
scriptures is a vast literature, and I've only touched the surface of the ocean. Okay, I mean, there are so many scriptures. You've got the four Vedas to begin with. The Rig Veda that talks about the hymns and the chants in praise of the divine. You've got the Sam Veda that contains the musical chants. You have got the Yajur Veda that talks about the spells and the charms. Sorry, the rituals. The Yajur Veda talks about the rituals, and the Atharva Veda talks about the spells and the charms. Okay. Then you have got the Upavedas in the likes of the Ayurveda. You have got the Upanishads, which contain the essence of the Vedas, the Puranas, which are in the story format. You've got the Itihasas, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. You've got the and many other scriptures, the Tantra Shastras, the Agama Shastras, the Vastu Shastras, the Darshanas, and so on and so forth. So obviously, it has been an immense journey of study of a portion of the scriptures. I wouldn't say I've been able to study it all. In fact, no person can actually accomplish studying all the entire scriptures in one lifetime. So
Yeah.
I've tried researching from as many as I could and kind of group them into some sort of a logical story kind of a fashion, and introduce that in my book for the readers to read.
Okay, okay. Okay, and you also mentioned that Hinduism is more a way of life than a religion. So, how did this understanding influence the tone and message of your book?
Right. See, Hinduism is very old. It's very, very ancient. Okay. And what we know as the religion bit of it, the Sanatan Dharma, is an aspect, but the holistic philosophy of Hinduism is actually a way of life. Okay, it's been existing since time immemorial, if I may say so. Okay, uh, see, for example, traditionally, as per the traditional academicians, we know that the Mahabharata happened sometime in the year 3.5 to 3200 BC, that kind of a time frame. Okay. The Ramayana happened sometime in the 7000 BC Wala time frame. Okay. But the modern researchers, and there are some fantastic scholars who are researching on this subject, would like to name them, in fact, Nilesh Oak and Ma'am Rupa Bharati. So as per their researches, which is beyond carbon dating, okay, so they do researches on the constellations and the mention of certain so some of these aspects in the texts itself, right? So based on all those modern researches, they have dated Mr. Nilesh Oak has dated the Mahabharata to be as old as 5561 BC, the Ramayana to be as old as 12,000 BC. Okay, so even the Vedas, we generally believe that the Vedas were sometime composed sometime in between 3,000 to 1,500 BC, roughly around the Indus Valley Harappan civilization time. But even the Vedas, as per the new researchers, dates back to almost 22,000 BC. So you can imagine the expanse of time that we are talking about from an Hinduism as a way of life, as a way of living perspective, right? And
Yeah.
over all these years, Hinduism has assimilated the different cultures, the scripts, the knowledge, the religion, and has evolved as a form of life. I mean, the very fabric of India. I mean, the diversity and the plurality that it contains, right? It reflects this particular aspect of Hinduism to be a way of life and to be all inclusive.
Okay. I have to say you are full of knowledge. I am actually
Thank
listening
you.
to a lot of things from the first time, and it's actually very interesting. Okay,
Thank you,
so
Nadia.
moving on to the next question. So the first segment talks about the origin of universe and the concept of Brahma. What was the biggest challenge in explaining such deep and abstract ideas in simple language?
Right. I think one portion of the answer I've already given, about the simplicity versus what profound knowledge the
Yeah.
stories kind of captured. So, as far as the origin of the universe is concerned, Navya, there are two things that I've kind of come across almost all the religions during my study. One is that the form of universe that we see today, which is the manifested universe, okay? So this manifested universe generated or evolved from the unmanifest, okay? Now the unmanifest is the Brahman or the divine or the God or whatever way you may want to call it. Okay, so this unmanifest entity was Nirgun, was Nirakar. Okay, basically formless and attributeless. Okay, from this unmanifest, you had the manifest world that was created. So that's almost across the scriptures, across the religions. Okay, One more thing that I've seen is the presence of the primordial waters or the oceans, okay, that existed at the time of origin of the universe. Okay. Yeah, even the Bible, in the Bible, the Genesis are the first is the first book of the Bible. That also says that at the beginning, at the time of creation, the Spirit of God hovered over the dark waters. Okay. And obviously, the same concept was replicated from the Hinduistic principles as well. And the beauty of it, Navya, is that water actually constitutes more than 70% of our universe.
Yes, yes.
Water actually constitutes more than 70% of the human body as well. Okay, so
Yes.
that's the significance and the importance of the primordial waters at the time of creation. Okay. From a from a Hindu perspective, Brahma is generally regarded as the creator god. There are several other stories also. Okay, I'm not getting into it, but generally Brahma is regarded as the creator god. Okay, so it is believed that Brahma had created this wonderful golden cosmic egg, okay, which contained all the prana and the life energies. And this egg was called the Hiranya Garbha, okay, from which he separated the sky and the earth, and subsequently the universe started forming. Okay, so and since then the universe came to be known as the Brahmanda. So you would have heard the word Brahmanda, right? But Brahmanda is nothing but Brahma's anda. So
Okay.
that's how the word Brahmanda, that's how the word Brahmanda originated. Okay.
Okay.
Now, as per some of the Vishnu related scriptures, it also says that Brahma emanated from the navel of Vishnu and then he went on to create the world. I mean, there are descriptions for that which finds a mention in my book. So I'll not get into it at this point of time. So that's how, when Brahma, after creating the universe, after creating the physical aspects of the universe, the nature, the mountains, etc., his creation of the humankind or the mankind, are a set of very interesting stories, which I have captured in my book as well. Okay, and lastly, Navya, from our origin perspective, since you raised this topic about the origin of the universe,
Yeah, yeah.
there is a popular verse, a hymn in the Rig Veda, which is called the Nasadiya Sukta. Okay, now, this particular hymn is supposed to be the hymn of creation, the hymn of origin of the universe. Okay. But ironically, it actually doesn't conclude upon how the universe would have originated. It says that probably at the beginning there was complete darkness. It also says, paradoxically, that probably at the beginning there was complete light.
Okay.
And even probably the gods might not be aware how the universe would have been created. So it makes those kind of statements. And in fact, it also says that the universe might have always eternally existed. Now, that's where we get this concept of anadikal, anantakal, right? And that's where the concept of the cyclical aspect of time in Hinduism comes into play. See, in Hinduism, uh, life is not the time is not linear. Okay, there is creation, there is sustenance, there is destruction, and then creation again. That's the story of the universe.
Okay.
Same with us human beings. Okay, because as per Hindu philosophies, the atman of the soul doesn't die. It is perpetual, it is everlasting. Okay, it manifests into your physical body. That's where it is created. It sustains, it dies, the atman takes another physical format and it's get created again, right? So this is unlike the Abrahamic religions. Abrahamic religions, which is primarily Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, there what happens is time is linear. Okay, you have a finite beginning and you have a finite ending in the form of the judgment day. Okay, but in Hinduism, it's cycle. Unless you break away from the cycle and get into the aspect of moksha, but that's a different story. I'll stay away from it now.
Okay, thank you for the wonderful answer. So we have talked about the first segment of your book, and now coming to the second segment. So it focuses on the Leelas of Krishna. And what does Krishna personally mean to you, and why did you choose to dedicate a full section to his life?
Okay, very interesting question. Difficult to answer as well, but I'll try to. Um, See, you probably will be aware of the concept of the avatars. Okay? So, in simple words, whenever there has been adharma, there is evilness in this universe, in this society, God has descended on earth in the form of an avatar to demolish, to abolish the evilness and restore sanity back. Uh, uh, so, in this context, the Dasha avatars or the 10 avatars of Vishnu are very popular. Okay? I must mention here, Navya, that uh, beyond these 10 avatars, there are many more avatars of Vishnu. Again, they find a mention in my book. So, but generally, we people know the Dasha avatars form of Vishnu. Okay, and even the avatars, are very interesting. They have a progression, in terms of their growth. Okay, in the sense, for example, the first avatar of Vishnu was the Matsya avatar. Okay, Matsya is a
Okay.
fish. Okay,
Okay.
life started in water. Do you remember what I just now mentioned sometime
Yeah.
back? The primordial waters.
Yeah.
That's the first avatar of Vishnu. Water. Okay, in the water. Then
Okay.
you had the Kurma avatar, okay, which is a tortoise, which is an amphibian, water and land. Okay. Then
Okay.
you've got so after the Kurma avatar, you have the Varha avatar, which is a wild boar avatar form. Okay. So now see the transition from the water onto land has happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you have a half animal and a half human form of avatar of Vishnu, which is called the Narasimha avatar. Okay.
Okay. Hmm.
Then in the Vamana avatar, the Vishnu avatar takes a full human form, but in the form of a dwarf.
Okay.
Okay. Parshuram, the sixth avatar of Vishnu, is a full-fledged masculine human being. So are you observing the patterns of progression that is happening?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you have the more evolved forms of avatar of Vishnu, which is Rama, Krishna, Balram, Kalki, who's yet to come, and so on and so forth. So that's the
Okay.
beauty of progression. In fact, even Charles Darwin, in his book, in his famous book, The Theory of Evolution, has actually kind of replicated the same uh, concept. Okay. Okay, now coming to Krishna. So Krishna is one of the most fascinating avatars of Vishnu, perhaps because he has led a full cycle of life right from his birth unto until his mortal demise. Okay. And his life from day one has been a life of miracles. Right when he was born, the jails were broken, the prison guards fell asleep, the Yamuna waters parted and made way
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
Krishna. Then you will be aware of all the infancy pranks of Krishna, the way he demolished all the asuras and the demons even when he was a child. So
Yes.
his life has been full of miracle. Okay, and
Yeah.
the beauty is everyone who came in contact with Krishna actually attained moksha or liberation. Okay.
Okay.
Even his uncle, the evil king Kansa, okay, who wanted to kill Krishna because of a prophecy, even if he had attained moksha when he was killed by Krishna. You know why? He attained moksha in a bhaya rasa. Bhaya is fear. Okay. So it is said that at one point of his life, Kamsa was so fearful of Krishna. Okay, he used to think, Abhi Krishna aa jayega, he'll kill me now. If I go there, he will gobble me up. So he was obsessed so much with Krishna that in his obsession he always uttered the name of Krishna, okay? And that made him attain moksha. So that's the beauty of Krishna's Leela. I mean, we all know about Krishna being a warfare strategist in Mahabharata, so I'll really not, get into that aspect. But he was a master negotiator. I mean, he tried his every level best to stop the battle of Kurukshetra, but at the same time, he also knew that the battle was inevitable. It was a dharma yuddha. Dharma sthapana had to be done. Some of the evil forces, that had evolved to be finished on, right? So he knew everything. In fact, when he was cursed by, Gandhari after the battle that he would die 36 years after the Mahabharata, Krishna knew that that was destined to happen because with his death, the Dwapar Yuga had come to an end and the Kali
Yeah.
Yuga had to begin, right? Even the hunter who killed Krishna, okay, he knew he had to balance karmas with the hunter and therefore he had to die at his hands because Krishna was actually killed by a hunter. Okay, so this hunter was actually Bali in his previous incarnation, who was Sugriva's brother. I don't know if you're able to relate it. And Krishna was Rama in his previous avatar. So as Rama and Bali, they had certain karmas that had to be fulfilled. So he knew that in this particular Dwapar Yuga, Krishna had to die at the hands of Jara the hunter. So he was a masterclass person who really cannot be defined. Is inexplicable.
Okay. So it's like I am worshipping Krishna since childhood, but I knew a little, a very, I knew very less about Krishna, and now I'm getting a lot of information. So it's
Yeah, his life is beauty. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like we were talking about Krishna a lot. So do you want to specify something around Radha and Krishna?
Okay, that is immensely beautiful question. So Radha and Krishna, their relationship is wonderful. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I
Okay.
agree. Yeah.
Radha and Krishna are the same entity. Okay.
Okay.
They manifested in different forms so as to teach their leelas to the people of this universe. Okay. One thing is very clear that without worshipping, without attaining Radha, you cannot get Krishna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Radha needn't have done anything to get the attention of Krishna. Okay? Krishna was hers. And yet she wept for Krishna. She yearned for Krishna. You
Yeah.
know why? That was to teach her sakhis, her other gopis, the intensity of devoting one's life to Krishna. So that was Radha for Krishna. Okay. Um, Usually people misconstrue the Ras Leela that you would have heard, where Krishna does this divine dance with not just Radha but all the gopis. Usually the Ras Leela is misconstrued by people, okay? As something which is lustful. I mean, that's a very cheap and common thinking. But it was the dance of the divine, where Krishna ensured that every person who wanted to be with Krishna in some form or the other went and got Krishna's attention in this divine dance of the Ras Leela.
Okay.
Uh, Radha worshipped or loved Krishna not because Krishna was a god or she worshipped him with in a ritualistic fashion. Okay, Radha simply loved Krishna. Okay?
Yeah.
Full
I
stop. It was a concept of ultimate devotion and complete submission. Okay, okay. There's an interesting story that I would like to share, Navia. Once, the Ashtabharyas or the eight wives of Krishna, they were jealous of Radha and they wanted to teach Radha a lesson. Okay. So
okay.
they take a boiling glass of milk and offer it to Radha and tell her that, hey, Radha, Krishna has sent this milk for you. So drink
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Radha didn't care for it. Okay. She just consumed the boiling milk without even checking the temperature because it was Krishna who had given it to
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Hmm.
Nothing happened to her. When the wives returned home, they found that Krishna was burning with all these boils, because Radha had drank
Okay.
that warm glass of milk.
Okay.
Okay? So that is the essence of Radha and Krishna. Okay. There's another small episode. So once Krishna was ill, okay, he told Narada that, Narada, in order to get well, okay, I need the dust from under the feet of one of my sincere devotees. Okay.
Okay.
But there is a risk to it. The devotee might die as a result of doing this act. Okay. Narada went to everyone and no one obviously obliged him. So no one gave the dust from their feet
Hmm.
except for Radha.
Hmm.
He immediately took the dust and gave it to Narada and said that, hey, Narada, come on, take it quickly to Krishna so that he gets well soon.
Hmm. Okay.
So this exemplifies two things. One is that for Radha, it didn't matter whether she lived or died. It was Krishna who was everything. That's one.
Yes. Yes.
Second is, what I just now mentioned, Navya, is that she didn't need any kind of ritualistic aspects to worship or love Krishna. Okay. See, what if the same thing would have happened with us? What would we have thought? We would have thought, but how can I give the dust from underneath my feet to Krishna? Krishna is a god. I worship him, right?
Yes. Yes.
Or rather, that wasn't the case. She needn't require any validation, any kind of ritualistic validation in order to love Krishna. Okay? So that was Radha's love for Krishna. I don't know if I've been able to explain it, but I just wanted to, kind of make a mention of these stories.
That's two wonderful and very interesting stories I got to know. And yeah, Radha's and Krishna's love stories, I think everyone's favorite because it's actually divine love story.
Yeah, it's a story of transcendental love.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Okay, so moving on to the final segment of your book. So your book shifts from stories to philosophy. Was it difficult to make this transition while keeping readers engaged?
Uh, yes, I tried to be gradual with this shift, Navia. The first segment of my book is more of the mythological stories.
Yeah,
The second segment is, more around, not entirely, but more around the Itihasas, Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and it ends with the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. So the intention has been to kind of acclimatize the reader with a bit of dharma, karma, that
yes.
kind of a stuff, and then I move on. I make a transition on to the third segment, which I agree is slightly heavy in terms of the Brahman, the Atman, basically the Upanishad text is what I've covered in the third segment. But I've tried to, keep the verbiage and the lessons and the stories in a simpler format, so that everyone can actually read and enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next question. You explore concepts like karma, dharma, non-duality, and kundalini energy. So, while researching and writing out these topics, did your own understanding of life change?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing that I understood was that spirituality is beyond religion.
Okay.
How do I explain that? Okay, religion is more of deities, worship, prayers, rituals,
Rituals, traditions.
temples,
Yeah, yeah,
traditions, right?
yeah.
Uh, and sometimes superstition as well. Let me be honest. We have
It
to be
is, it
honest with
is.
it. Okay?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Spirituality is beyond. Spirituality is devoid of all this. Spirituality is doing your karmas and understanding the fact that understanding the self is the highest form of knowledge.
Knowledge, yes.
Okay? And karma is the first step towards spirituality. Okay? Uh, this famous shloka, the verse from the Gita, where it says that karm karo phal ki chinta mat karo. That is usually misinterpreted by the people. Okay, they think, "Arey yaar, jo hona wo hoga, to karm kyun kare?" That's how people usually
Mm-hmm.
think. That's not what it says. Okay, it says that you have to perform nishkama karma. Nishkama karma is the karma you perform your actions and you disassociate yourself from the fruits of your actions. What it actually means is that don't be over excited with your success and don't grieve in excess with your failures. Okay, take life with a balanced approach, take life with a feeling, with a sense of equanimity. Okay, take pleasure and pain in equal measure,
Yes.
but continue to perform your karmas. Without karmas, you cannot attain, cannot do anything. Okay, people usually misconstrue that a sannyasi is more spiritual. Okay, sannyasi, but as for the shastras, it is a tyagi that you should aspire to become. Okay, there is a very at a holistic level, Navya, a sannyasi and a tyagi might appear to be very same. Okay,
Okay.
but there's a difference. A sannyasi kind of moves away from a material world, say
Yes.
into a forest or a hermitage or whatever,
Yes.
leads a life of asceticism, performs his rituals, whatever he does. Okay, but the Shastra says that even a sannyasi might get attached to the forest, very forest life that he's living. Okay?
Okay.
Tyagi is someone who whose actions happen here, who disassociates himself from the fruit of the actions. Okay.
Okay.
For
Okay.
example, you can lead a normal life and yet be a tagi, yet be a spiritual person. Okay. There is a okay, let me explain this maybe in a simple story format, Navya. There was this person called Sukha.
Okay.
He later came to be known as Sukadeva. Sukha was the son of Ved Vyas. Okay? The rishi was composed the Mahabharata, as we know, generally, popularly. So Sukha had, in his childhood, he has completed all his education. He mastered all the shastras. And after accomplishing all that, he comes back home one day and tells his father, Ved Vyas, that father, I've accomplished all my studies by gaining and gathering of knowledge. Now, what do I do? So Vyasa tells him that you should now go and get married. So Sukha says, Father, how are you saying that? I mean, all my life I have, learned after books and knowledge and, how to attain moksha. And after attaining so much of knowledge, you are asking me to get married and get entangled into the same illusion, into the same moh maya of life, something that I wanted to move away from. So then Vyasa explains to Sukha that you have to see, we have these ashramas in our Hindu philosophy, right? That of brahmacharya, grihastha, vanasprata, and sannyasa, right? So he says that you have to undergo all the four stages and the ashramas of life in order to understand what life was all about, in order to instill that aspect of tyaga, where you disassociate yourself from all the bhogs or the materialism of the life.
Materialism,
And
yes.
only then, after understanding, you can attain moksha. Okay. So he sends, but Sukha was still not convinced to the answer. So he sends him to Janaka, who the king, who was Sita's father, by the way. So he sends Sukha to Janaka's palace and tells him that go and take your lesson from Janaka. He's a very liberated man. So when Sukha approaches the palace of Janaka, he sees so much of opulence in the city. Okay, people were all enjoying. There was so much of wealth. There was so much of gold. So he wondered that he felt distressed. He felt that how could Janaka really give me the lessons of life when there is so much of opulence in his kingdom, in his palace? But when he spoke with Janaka, Janaka explained, see, I'm the king. I'm doing my karma and my dharma as a king. My
Mhm.
duty is to take care of my subjects. But I'm not attached to any of it. I'm telling the story in short now, yeah. I'm not attached to any of it. Okay. So that's what explains the concept of a tyagi. That's when Sukha understood the true meaning of spirituality. So he comes back home, he gets married, he leads a life of grahastha as well as that of spirituality. And it is believed that he actually attained moksha even before his father Vedyasa could. So that's the story.
Okay, so he got married, but he was also, not
He
attached
got
to
married.
anyone.
He did what his karma was, he was supposed to do.
Okay,
Okay? But he maintained his spirituality, he maintained his detachment with
detached.
as I mentioned to you, the balance of life. No excess pleasure, no excess pain. You take life as it is and
Okay.
perform your rightful karmas.
Yeah, people usually, say these things like spirituality means worshipping. If we keep worshipping, that means we are doing our karma, but worshipping is not karma, it's our action.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
completely
most of
agree
our
with
of
you.
our Hindu saints and sages were all married. They led a domestic life, and yet they were highly spiritual.
Okay, okay, that's very interesting. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So, writing a book on such vast and sacred knowledge must have required deep study and reflection, right? So, what was your writing process like? Did you follow a routine or did inspiration guide you?
Well, I started writing this book sometime in March or April 2023, Navya. And,
Okay,
uh, so it has been, but obviously the study, of the studying of the scriptures and the research obviously has been for a much, much longer time.
okay,
In the initial days, I just kind of wrote down my thoughts or whatever I've read or found something interesting. And then, gradually it became more formalized. I became more disciplined, and I knew that now I'm kind of writing the book. Okay. So that's when I got more serious about it. And, I followed a more routine life.
okay, okay. Okay, so we are moving on to the last question. Finally, what is the one thing you truly want your readers to take away from your book, Moksha, The Liberation, that could create a lasting impact in their lives?
Okay. So I think, not kind of repeat, but I'll kind of summarize. that the human life is a precious gift.
Yes, it is.
Live it to the fullest. Uh, it is believed that we have attained or taken this human birth after having been born in 84 lakh living forms. After that many births, we have taken birth as a human.
Okay.
So value it. Okay. Understand the fact uh, that rightful karma is what spirituality is all about. Moksha is not about discarding life. It is about leading life to the fullest, but in the rightful manner.
Right. Yes.
There is this one Brahman, and understanding of the self is the highest knowledge. And finally, Navya, I would request all your viewers to grab a copy of the book and read it. It's not only spiritual. It has got some very interesting mythological stories, and even gradually transitions on the aspects of spirituality, but tells the stories, tells the facts. So yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for the wonderful answer. So again, thank you so much, Mr. Mukherjee, for sharing your thoughts and your journey with us today. It has truly been an enlightening conversation, and I truly learned a lot. So yeah. So and to all the viewers, I encourage you to read Moksha the Liberation, reflect on it, talk about it with your friends and family, and share your reviews. The book is available on Amazon, Flipkart, and White Falcon publishing stores. So, thank you so much for joining us. Stay inspired, stay curious, and keep exploring the deeper meaning of life. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Navya. It was a pleasure talking to you.